Now that Season 2 of House of the Dragon has ended, it is simpler to analyze the program as something quite distinct from its predecessor. Game of Thrones told the story of numerous houses fighting for control of the Iron Throne, but this prequel takes a more micropolitical approach, with House Targaryen split against itself. House of the Dragon has been able to tell a more personal story thanks to these family member fissures, even if it has increased the use of its eponymous dragons in ways that have been both tragic and humorous. It appears that the Season 2 finale, written by Sarah Hess and directed by Geeta Vasant Patel, focuses more on teasing out future narrative threads than providing a definitive conclusion. As the montage that wraps up our time in Westeros, for now, merely positions everyone on the brink of war. This is because the conflict between the Blacks, who are loyal to Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen, and the Greens, who are a part of King Aegon II Targaryen's contingent, is becoming increasingly intense. In the House of the Dragon Season 2 finale, the Greens want to leave King's Landing. Everyone objected to the Greens' new Prince Regent Aemond's suggestion of forming an alliance with the Triarchy of the Free Cities. But now Master of Ships Tyland Lannister finds himself in Essos after traveling there to negotiate the alliance on behalf of the Crown. Things are not going well at all. Particularly because the Triarchy's leaders desire gold, which is the one thing Tyland is unable to provide for them. Tyland is adamant that breaking the blockade that Corlys Valerion's ships are now enforcing would only be beneficial to everyone, but the Triarchy won't budge because they have no genuine reason to help in this war, not until one of them proposes they be granted possession of the Stepstones as compensation. Moreover, the Triarchy's only commitment is to impose a tiny levy on anyone traveling through that chain of islands. Tyland may be making a decision he'll regret by agreeing to hand over the Stepstones in exchange for the Triarchy's armada of ships, but these pirates, as the Master of Ships scornfully labels them, are pretty good negotiators. Before Tyland can return to Westeros with his new fleet, however, he has to meet the approval of their commander, Admiral Lohar, and is more than taken aback by the revelation that said admiral, emerging from the back corner of the room, happens to be a woman. Lohar gives him an appraising look before issuing a challenge of her own. She won't sail with a man who can't beat her in some good old-fashioned mud wrestling. It's about as sloppy and undignified and distanced from Westeros as Tyland has ever been. And initially, it looks like Lohar is going to win handily, until the Master of Ships gets in a good punch or two, which is apparently enough to make Lohar reconsider her opinion of him being a soft noble. She'll lead her fleet of ships into battle on the Greens' behalf, but first, she has one more request for Tyland at the feast later that night: impregnate all of her wives first. After turning tail with Vhagar and escaping Dragonstone due to Rhaenyra's larger dragon gang, Aemond isn't exactly handling the events of last week's episode well back in Westeros. Now, he's taken Vhagar to Sharp Point and set the entire town on fire, inhabitants and all, in an outburst of uncontrollable rage and perhaps some unjustified embarrassment. Though it's one of Aemond's worst mistakes to date, King's Landing's Master of Whisperers, Larry Strong, finds it especially unsettling and promptly seeks an audience with an Aegon who is still recuperating to apprise him of the situation. Larry's offers the king his own recommendation as well: leave the city while Aemond is still away, because you never know what might happen to him when he comes back, even if it's just starting up where he left off at Rook's Rest and land the final blow. Credit where it's due, Aegon's first instinct is to resist rather than run and have Aemond thrown in prison by the time his brother comes back, but that doesn't mean he'll be any more prepared to face Rhaenyra and her 7 dragons with Vhagar out of the picture. It's here that we learn Aegon's dragon, Sunfire, didn't survive the battle at Rook's Rest, and Aegon himself is so disfigured that certain parts no longer work the way they used to. Yet Larry's appeals to the part of Aegon that wants to be beloved, spinning a story of someone who can return once his enemy's forces are too exhausted to go on, and be hailed by his people as a king risen from the ashes. The next time we see Aegon in this episode, he's taken Larry's counsel to heart, fleeing King's Landing alongside his Master of Whisperers in a covered wagon while others ready themselves for battle. Alicent, who has just returned to the city from a long walk in the nature, is also considering whether or not to choose flight over combat. She is considering how best to protect herself and her daughter Helena, and her absence will not go unnoticed, as Aemond is already searching for his sister, hoping to persuade her to join the fight with her dragon, Dreamfire. However, as Rhaenyra has already pointed out, Helaena is not the dragon rider her brothers are, and despite Aemond's desperate efforts to recruit her, both Helaena and Alicent have refused to join him in the fight. If anyone can see the extent to which Aemond's recent actions have been defined by his unchecked fury, it's Alicent, but she refuses to let his basest instincts corrupt his sister in the process. Aemond leaves the room without securing a second dragon for his cause, and Alicent immediately seeks her own assistance, from Grand Maester Orwyle, in the hopes of securing passage to parts unknown to us. Sir Criston Cole has reached his breaking point emotionally while traveling to Harrenhal. When Gwaine, Alicent's brother, confronts Criston for allegedly possessing one of the Dowager Queen's handkerchiefs, Criston doesn't justify his behavior or fabricate an affair, rather, it is Criston's admission that he views Alicent as his multifaceted savior that finally causes Gwaine to drop his sword. The Lord Commander has obviously been irreparably damaged by the events at Rook's Rest, and this has caused him to consider whether or not honor is a myth and whether or not men can truly be corrupted, after seeing hundreds, perhaps thousands of people perish from the terrible spread of dragonfire. Criston acknowledges that his belief that he was a champion of the righteous and that everyone else should be held accountable for their actions has altered, the dragons dance, and men are like dust under their feet. Gwaine is too shocked to respond at all to Criston's statement that, at this point, dying could be more of a relief than anything else. Back at King's Landing, Aemond makes one last private plea to Helaena for her assistance. The Queen, who has just been experiencing a sort of shared dream state with Daemon, Matt Smith, more on that below, is even less willing to entertain his argument than before. Helaena had been the one to readily identify her younger brother as the one responsible for Aegon's debilitating injuries before. Courtesy of her visions, and it's already been pointed out multiple times that she has no taste for burning anyone. However, Aemond's quiet appeal is more pleading now, and there's even a tear in the Prince Regent's eye, though whether it's from rage or vulnerability is unclear. Helaena appears to be making a prophecy of her own when she brings up Aemond's part in Aegon's trauma once more. Aegon will be king again. Victory is still unknown to him. He sits on a wooden throne, and you'll be dead. You vanished from sight after being engulfed in the god's eye. The Queen doesn't waver in the face of Aemond's threat to have Helaena executed for her remarks, pointing out that her passing wouldn't alter the trajectory of the events she has witnessed. It is unclear how or when these events will take place, but viewers of Fire Blood are aware that the drama has clearly simply hinted at Aemond's specific destiny in the dance.at Dragonstone. Rhaenyra's brand new dragon riders are proving a bitter pill to swallow for Jacaerys, Harry Collett, who's instantly turned off by Ulf the Whites, Tom Bennett, poor manners, the man's even got his feet up on the painted table. Of all places. By contrast, Hugh the Hammer, Kieran Boo, attempts to make amends for his compatriot's behavior, pointing out that Ulf doesn't know how to act around nobility because he's never had any experience at court. But Ulf is also single-handedly voicing many of Jace's worst fears by pointing out that they're both dragon riders now, cut from the same cloth. Given that exchange between Jace and his mother last week, and the prince's lingering concerns about whether any of these new additions to their cause could challenge for the throne someday, there's no love lost between Jace and any of these men, even if they have their own dragons now. When Baela finds him sulking later, she issues a stern pep talk that seems to work: get up and take your place by your mother's side. It's a conversation that couldn't have happened a moment too soon, as Rhaenyra reveals her plan of attack to her dragon riders over dinner that night. They must ride in 2 days' time to subdue the cities and armies of Old Town and Lannisport, which means a crash course in learning Valyrian commands and being fitted with armor. Meanwhile, at Harrenhal, Rhaenyra's emissary from the small council, Sir Alfred Broom, Jaime Kenna, has finally arrived to shadow Daemon. The king consort seems less than pleased to have a babysitter following him around, but once the two men are in private in the Godswood, Sir Alfred offers to shift his loyalties to Daemon and back his claim to the crown instead. Admittedly, the Daemon of only a few weeks ago would have greedily snatched up another bannerman, but the demon who regards Ser Alfred now is confident in calling him out as a turncloak, rejecting the implication that he should serve as the king Westeros needs. Their conversation doesn't go unnoticed by Harrenhal's castellan, Ser Simon Strong, who hastily sends off a raven to Rhaenyra, expressing his concerns about subterfuge and betrayal. Whatever the contents of the letter are, they're worrisome enough that Rhaenyra instantly saddles up Syrax and flies to Harrenhal alongside Adam and Seasmoke to discover, once and for all, what Daemon's true intentions are. But before Rhaenyra gets to Harrenhal, Daemon experiences the greatest vision of all, which he receives as payment for going with Alice Rivers to the Godswood late at night. Upon coming into contact with the Heart Tree, which is already seeping a blood-like red sap, he is thrown into a dystopian future dream that alters his understanding of reality. We see Daemon and other important characters, as well as Brynden Rivers/Lord Bloodraven, also known as the Three-Eyed Raven, the Night King outside the wall, and last but not least, a young Daenerys Targaryen with her 3 newly hatched dragons from the Game of Thrones Season 1 finale. These glimpses not only show us what the demon may lead to, but also other important characters. It's a sequence that immediately gives Daemon new context for his previous arguments with Rhaenyra about the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy, but also seems to change him for the better. When he first arrived at Harrenhal, as Alice observes, he was a closed fist who wished to bend the world to his will. Now, Daemon's willingness to submit himself to these glimpses of past, present, and future has given him an even deeper insight into the future than Rhaenyra could claim, and he finally envisions his wife atop the Iron Throne rather than Viserys or himself. Ser Simon Strong is therefore present to greet Rhaenyra when she lands at Harrenhal, waking an irate Caraxes from his nap, ushering the queen in to see Daemon immediately. The atmosphere is strained as the two wives meet for the first time since Daemon left Dragonstone, and it doesn't get any easier even when they revert to their previous practice of conversing in High Valyrian. Daemon, however, is adamant that he knows what is actually going to happen, the winter that follows the actual conflict and the person who will be chosen to lead them. Therefore, Daemon makes the most sensual gesture of all time in this series when he kneels down before Rhaenyra in front of all the men he has won over. He says, "I am meant to serve you, and all of these with me, until death or the end of our story." This augmentation of forces is encouraging for Rhaenyra's chances of regaining her throne, but it also causes the queen much anxiety as she mulls over what needs to happen when she and Mysaria return to Dragonstone. Who will ultimately pay the price, even if she wins and brings peace back to the realm? We're in for one more surprise in the finale, an unanticipated parallel to Episode 3, The Burning Mill, whereby Rhaenyra entered King's Landing covertly to meet with Alicent. As Alicent asks Rhaenyra for a late-night meeting, we now know where the Dowager Queen was hoping to travel to, and the two women see each other for the first time since the day before in the Great September. During an extensive talk, Alicent acknowledges that a great deal of her past behavior was directed against Rhaenyra, whom she felt was entitled to liberties that she was not. She gained fresh insight into her desires, to live, and distastes, to govern, during her brief stay camping in the Kingswood. However, Rhaenyra is being offered the opportunity to take control of King's Landing once Aemond has taken off for combat and the city is left undefended. Alicent is not in Dragonstone to ask for forgiveness for any wrongs done. Rhaenyra counters that in order to prove her claim, she will need to openly assassinate Aegon, the opposition, and it cannot be a bloodless conquest. Alicent gives a hesitant nod in acceptance of her decision, knowing that she must let her son to die as a necessary sacrifice for peace. But both women are on the verge of tears by the end, even Rhaenyra's unwavering determination starting to waver. As seen in Episode 3 and again in this finale, Darcy and Cook continue to be each other's greatest scene partners in a moment that conveys a lot even though none of their characters says a word. Rhaenyra notes that history might not remember Alicent well and that she will be remembered as a villain, a cold queen, grasping for power and then defeated, as she declares her own plan to escape with Helaena and Jaehaera. Now that she's making her own decisions, Alicent doesn't give a damn what people think of her. However, she offers one final request of her own, repeating Aemond's from earlier in the show and asking Rhaenyra to accompany her. The Black Queen declines, saying that Alicent's role in all of this was predetermined long ago, and it seems as though these two ladies, who had formerly had a profoundly romantic relationship, are now separating. We monitor the movements of all the main players on the board as Rhaenyra's dragon riders get ready for battle, Tyland, Lohar, and the Triarchy advance from Essos, while Criston, Gwaine, Prince Daemon on his dragon Tessarion, and his soldiers continue their journey to Harrenhal. Rhaenyra, who has been bumbling around the Vale for a while, Corlys and Alan of Hull are getting ready to sail for the blockade, and those loyal to Rhaenyra and their army are also moving, emerges victorious from her encounter with a wild dragon that she may very possibly tame. In addition, the season-ending surprise indicates that Otto Hightower, whom Alicent has been pursuing throughout, is in fact incarcerated. However, it is unclear who is restraining him. It feels more like a menacing precursor of doom, with everyone starting their march toward obliteration, as Rhaenyra and Alicent exchange glances with the rising sun and the montage's soundtrack reaches its peak. That concludes Subjects. Unlock the mysteries of narrative with our YouTube channel's Guide to the Art of Cinema. Join us as we explore the plots, characters, and pure enchantment that movies bring into our lives. From writing to screen, we have you covered. Join us as we examine, evaluate, and celebrate the magic of movies. For more videos, subscribe to our channel.